Hello, Geek Out. My name is Rich Sheffrin. My company's name is Strategic Profits. And I work with James and Nick. Actually, my company is co-owned with Agora Publishing. If you've ever heard of Agora Publishing, I actually worked with them from when they were about a $100 million company to over $1.5 billion. I'm actually, I think, one of the only online coaches and consultants that has a $1 billion testimonial from a company, and that company is Agora Publishing. I've also coached Russell Brunson of ClickFunnels, Ryan Deiss of Digital Marketer, and pretty much every top online marketing guru that's out there. I've written a bunch of free reports. Some of them have gone viral. And I know James and Nick really well. They're both contributors in an Agora publication that we have called Steal Our Winners. And they asked me if I would share with you what really is my wheelhouse, my super strength, my one thing that I'm better at than anything else. And what I'm best at is taking a tremendous amount of information, going through it very quickly, synthesizing it, and spotting the next trend, spotting the opportunity, and really being at the forefront of personal knowledge management. And it's my contention here that this presentation that I'm going to do for you right now, while very different probably than every other presentation that you've gone through during Geek Out, this has the potential to radically change your income, especially when built on top of everything that you've already learned at Geek Out. So, it shouldn't be any big mystery to anyone who's here, right, that we're inundated with information. We're inundated with screens. We are basically, the information now is the raw material that we work with day in and day out. And it's like this continual torrent coming at us, right? It's not a stream, it's more than a stream, it's a torrent. And yet many people are still using antiquated ways of working and antiquated uses of technology, so that what they end up doing is really inhibiting themselves instead of helping themselves. So what do I mean by that? Well, okay, we're looking at a waterfall here. Now, the old way of dealing with information was to categorize it and put it in buckets, right? If you guys have been around for a while, or as long as I've been around, then you remember when email first came out, and you'd have all your folders, and you'd pull the information and put it into a folder, right? We used to think of putting information in buckets like that. But when you have the amount of information that's coming at us, right, I hope that nobody is still doing that with their emails, that they have 100 different folders and they're moving stuff over, because the search function has gotten so good, and you'd be wasting an hour or two a day trying to put information in buckets, and you would never be finished, and it would actually hinder you of getting real work done. Okay? I believe that your income is very much reliant on the way you think, right? The way you use your brain. And the way you use your brain to handle information, process information, leverage information, and get the most out of it does not come naturally. And so unless you just happen to have someone who kind of showed you the way, odds are is that you're not currently playing at your very best. You're actually kind of like using technology that is this old. Right now, I'm sure you've got a real computer, and I'm sure you've got like a smartphone, but if you're using it the way that we used to use old technology, then you're really starting 2 steps back. And that's my contention here, that almost everyone I meet, almost everyone I know, doesn't handle, manage, process their information correctly. And I'm going to show you how to do it. And I'm going to show you how to do it in a way where you will increasingly get smarter, faster, more certain, more memory, no info overload anymore, no frustration. It's game changer. Okay, this is what I don't want to happen to you, right? But if you're being handicapped by the way you process information, if you're being handicapped by the way you store information, then it's only a matter of time until you end up not being able to compete. And, I don't have to tell anyone who's watching these presentations of Geek Out that we are in a global economy. We compete with everyone worldwide. And so you really have to be at the top of your game as we become this one world, at least online, and because you're competing with people all around the world. All right, so here's one of my beliefs, and that is that information is now the raw material of much of our daily reality. How you consume and manage the information flowing through your life is now one of the most decisive elements in your effectiveness. And I hope you agree with that. Does that make sense to you? That if you are not managing, handling, using, leveraging the information that is flowing through your life in the right way, that it certainly is detracting from your effectiveness? So I want to put my hand on a stack of Holy Bibles here and tell you that you're going to learn in the next 45 minutes or so an entirely new way of working with information at speeds many times faster than you do now. You'll be able to capture and organize your information to produce profitable insights and ideas, and that's really what it's all about. So the net effect will be that you'll be faster, you'll be smarter, and wealthier with the strategies and the tools that I'm about to share with you. So let's begin. All right, so it all started, my story, right? It all started with a missing highlight. This is a picture of me from a video I did over a decade ago, and I'm in one of my libraries here, and this was a video about what I do with books. I'm going to show it to you, but in this moment, I was in this library a time prior to this when I reached for a book. And when I reached for a book, because even though my memory isn't fantastic, I can always remember where I read something and what side of the page it was on and whether it was on the top or the bottom. And so I went into my library to get a book that I knew had something in it. But I had read the book like 2 years earlier, and for whatever reason, I guess because it was a cheap highlighter, all the highlights faded. And I read a lot. I read a couple books a week, and that freaked me out because all of a sudden then it meant that all the reading I had done, all the highlighting I had done, while useful to get some information in, I was not going to get the benefit of being able to review those highlights, which was a main reason why I highlighted it in the first place. So I freaked out. And I came up with a new system. I bought a guillotine, that's what that is on the left. I bought a color scanner, a double-sided color scanner, and we hired a virtual assistant in the Philippines. And this was my reading process from 2000 to 2010. I'd read and highlight a book. I would bring the book into the office. They would chop it. They would scan it. The scan would be sent to the Philippines. In the Philippines, they'd cut and paste all the highlights out, put it in a new document, Word document in a PDF, and then send it to me. And then I'd put the PDF in a binder. And I'd have binders on each topic that I read books on. So this is a video of me about 10 years ago. I posted this to YouTube about 10 years ago, and it's showing that exact process. So let's watch.
And normally I would give this book to Janine, but she's busy typing right now, and I'm recording. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you what actually happens to the books once I bring them into the office. What we do is we actually rip the binding off. So any book that you see in my library, we haven't done this yet too, but we've done it with literally thousands of books already. Okay, so now we have the book without the binding. Usually take off the first 2 pages. And now take off the end about the author stuff because I don't really keep that stuff. And so now we're left with just this book, right? Now, I have to get up and show you where it goes. Okay, so we'll be right back. Okay, so now we're going to take this book and we're going to walk over here. And let's see if you can see what I see. You will see over here, right here, this is a guillotine. And I'm going to turn the camera around so you can actually see this. All right, so now you can see the book here is in a guillotine. And what we're doing is basically getting ready to chop the glue off. And now we will actually cut off that. There's the binding. What's left of it. And now we have the book with no cover, just individual pages. Now we put it in the next machine. Okay, now that the binding's off, we've guillotined it. Now what we do is actually we stick it in this machine over here. And this is a, let's see if you can see it. It's a Canon DR908C. It's actually a high-speed, double-sided color scanner. Now, the reason why we do all this, obviously, is with what we do next. And what we do next is that book gets scanned. After the book is scanned, what happens is that it then gets sent to the Philippines. And once it's sent to the Philippines, we have someone who actually takes everything I highlighted and takes it out and puts it into a separate Word document.
So that's that. Now, here are all the binders. This is, this is about a year ago, so about 9 years later. These are all the binders that filled up with all those book notes.
By the way, like in the old days, before I had my iPad, all my notes went into books like these, which were books of notes on the books that I've read or gone through or courses. And these cabinets go all the way around.
So that was what I did. That was the way I read. I didn't think it was that advanced. It wasn't. But what I was doing was I was capturing anything that I thought was a great idea, and I'd have access to it much better than most. And it all happened because that highlight faded. Now, when the iPad first came out, even though I'm a big Mac guy, I didn't even see the need for it. I had my iPhone, I had my Mac Air, and I had my desktop. So I was like, where does this even fit in? And so I didn't buy it when it first came out, but a friend bought me one. And that's when everything changed for me. You see, I always wanted to learn how to speed read, but I was never able to. I took 2 classes. I took a Stanley Kaplan class. I think I took a Princeton Review class. But the problem was that speed reading is a skill, and I never had the discipline to use my finger and make myself go faster, and so the skill never took. So even though I had taken courses on speed reading, my reading speed was probably about 300 or 400 words a minute, not slow, but certainly not very fast. So, the beginning part here is the same, right? Read and highlight a book, it's chopped, new PDF gets created out of the highlights, goes into the binder, but now I added this. I turned the PDF into an EPUB with this app on my Mac called Calibre, and then I load the EPUB into another app on my iPad called Quick Reader. And it's Quick Reader that sent my speed higher and higher. And there's a good reason for it. I'm going to explain it. I'm going to show it to you, but you can easily do this too. And there's a lot of reasons why. So what Quick Reader does, if you look here on the left of on the slide, you can see how it shows "of Halloween candy and" is being highlighted. That's because the thing that I didn't do when I took speed reading classes, pacing myself and making my eyes move faster than I'm used to, and then keep doing it and then going even faster and faster and faster, that doesn't need to be done if you have an iPad app or any application that is doing the pacing for you. So you set the speed, like, how many words per minute do you want to read, how many stops per line, or how many lines per stop, and then it does the pacing for you, which trains your eyes to move fast so that you can learn to speed read and never have to do the drilling, although you're still doing it, but you're doing it in a different way, and I'll explain why it's so different. But that's the first thing, and that's why Quick Reader was a game changer for me. And it's really the one thing. I thought this was kind of cute. That guy looks like Albert Einstein, doesn't it? He's getting a ticket. So he's saying speed is relative. But speed is relative. So I'm sure we've all had the experience of speeding on the highway, then slowing down to the speed limit and having it feel like we're going really, really slow. And that's because speed is relative. Like, we get used to one thing and then we are in comparison, right? So the interesting thing is that reading, watching, listening, they all perform the same way. But when it comes to listening and watching, you can get sped up much easier and much faster. What do I mean by that? I mean that, like, let's say that right now you can listen to something at 1.5 times speed, but listening to it at 1.75, you don't understand it. Well, then you would raise the speed to 2, where now you're really not going to understand it. But you listen for 5 minutes, then you back it down to 150, and now it's going to be very easy for you to understand, right? And then you would just keep doing that. And you do the same thing with watching as well. You go to a point where you can no longer comprehend. You go at that point for a period of time, generally several minutes, and then you back it down. Now, it's not as easy with reading. You won't move as quickly as you do with listening and watching, but it works under the same premise. The same premise that when you slow down on a highway to the speed limit and you feel like you're going really slow, you're going to feel like your old reading speed is ridiculously slow. All right, so this is what I would do, right? I would have the highlights loaded into my Quick Reader app. I would review the highlights at 2 times my normal speed. Then I would review the highlights at 4 times my normal speed. Then I would review the highlights at 6 times my normal speed, and then I would back it down to 1.5 times my normal speed. And, you know, when I started, it was like I was doing it at 400, let's say 500 words a minute. So 2 times was 1,000, 4 times was 2,000, 6 times was 3,000, right? And then I backed it down to 750. 1.5 times the normal speed. And I would do this every day because I was reading on my elliptical. Now, one of the things is that I was reading my highlights, and that's important. In other words, I wasn't reading new books. I had already read these books. And because I had already read these books, I was familiar with them, and there was no concern about whether I was getting it or not. And that's important too. One of the biggest obstacles to you being able to read at much faster rates, listen at much faster rates, watch at much faster rates is your willingness to watch and not read or listen and not comprehend for a period of time. It feels like a waste of time, but you have to get your brain acclimated to those speeds. And the only way to do that is to be focused on learning how to move your eyes that fast or pay attention that much, and over time, the comprehension comes all the way back. All right, so now here's another video. This video is from that same old video where I was taking executive presence and ripping it apart and putting it into the scanner. So this is my old iPad from about 10 years ago, and this is Quick Reader, and I'm going to show you at 2,000 words, 3,000 words, and 4,000 words a minute. And it's on this was my stair machine before I got an elliptical. Let's pick this book here. It's called Win, The Key Principles to Take Your Business from Ordinary to Extraordinary. And it's written by Frank Luntz, a friend of mine. All right. And I press here and watch. So that's 2,000 words a minute, 2 stops per line. Turn off the video camera and then turn it back on, and so you can see 3,000 words a minute. Okay, this is 3,000 words a minute. Now let's go to 4,000 words a minute. This is 4,000 words a minute. And see, what you're doing here is by forcing yourself to keep up, your eyes start to learn to move faster and to take in chunks of words at a time. You do this consistently, and you train your eyes to move this fast. Hence, 2,000 words a minute is relatively easy for me now. It wasn't always the case. And that's how this works. So I hope this is starting to make sense, but it's going to make more. Okay, everything seems slow after you go fast for a few minutes. Just remember that. As I was saying, everything seems slow after going fast for a few minutes. So you're not wasting your time when you're going fast, even though during the beginning stages you're not really going to comprehend much. You're actually making it easier for you to jump up and level, but not to the levels that are extreme yet. This is interesting. Go ahead and read this slide. Now, I'm showing you this not because this is entirely true. This was a meme that went around the internet. There are certain words where it is easy to know what they are, even if they're misspelled. But with this particular slide, the reason I put it here is I want you to be very clear that there was a time when you looked at a word because you were reading, you had to sound out every letter. And because you had to sound out every letter, you read very slowly, right? Obviously, if you were still at that stage and you looked at this, you would not be able to read it. Now, but you aren't currently at the highest stage. If you're looking at one word at a time, saying it to yourself, and then understanding it, you can do it a lot better. One, because you can start looking at groups of words as opposed to a single word, just like you looked at groups of letters that made up a word as opposed to a single letter. And two, you will ultimately start to move to a place where you can see and understand. And we're going to remove the listen, and I have a slide about that. So this was my killer combo for quite a while. And I would get on my elliptical machine with my iPad, and to the left, you'll see an oxygen machine. Jay Abraham bought me an oxygen machine as a gift. He sent it to me because we've been partners in a bunch of projects for about 20 years. And he was using it for his Q&A calls. He thought that maybe I would want to use it for my Q&A calls. I didn't, but I found something online called EWOT, which is exercise with oxygen therapy. And so I work out with oxygen while I am reading at 2,000 and 3,000 words a minute and going through books that I've read prior. But there's a lot more to this. So that was my process, right? And now all of a sudden I started reading a lot faster. My reading was getting faster, and faster. And I not only put the PDFs in a folder where I could, search them, put them in a binder where I could read them, and put them in the iPad so I could speed read them. But I also got this app, $5 app called Say It, that would take the text and turn it into a recorded audio. So it would convert it to an MP4, and then I would take that and turn it into an MP3, and then I would put it in iTunes, and then from iTunes make it a book, and now I could listen to my notes at double speed as well. This is what Say It looks like, and you just cut and paste your text in there. Here's a screenshot of my library, and as you can see, these are all book notes. And, I have thousands of them, right? So these are everything I highlighted from that book now at 400 words a minute that I can speed up to 800 words a minute so I can review a book anytime I want. About a year later, a friend of mine told me about LibGen. If you don't know about LibGen, you're going to want to check it out. It's libgen.pw, libgen.io, and it's a Russian site that has it has a huge library of books, almost as big as Amazon, not quite, but almost as big as Amazon, which allows you to bypass the DRM, which is necessary if you want to use some of these tools. Now, there's another way to crack Amazon books. I'm not going to get into that here, but LibGen, if you don't know about it, great place to get books. So now that I was downloading the books, I could highlight them digitally as well. So I found this app called Goodreader, which I still use to this day. I love it. That's where I do all my highlighting. And what I like about it is that then I can export my highlights. The thing I don't like about exporting my highlights is that it has a notation next to every highlight. And so I was able to get around that, and I'll explain that in a second. Okay. So with LibGen and Goodreader, now I no longer needed to buy hardcovers and chop them or scan them. I could go to LibGen, get it, put it in Goodreader, read it, then immediately create a PDF or Word document from it and turn it into audio, turn it into speed reading, put it in a folder with all my other book notes so that when I want to create a program or anything, I can just do a search in that folder for phrases that are appropriate for what I'm working on, and I would be able to pull out all the notes I had taken on all the books I've read based on that search. Okay, so binders, folder, audio, quick reader. So life went on. I kept going, and then I found another app. Now this app is called Voice Dream, like DREAM, Voice Dream. And what's different about Voice Dream is that it only goes to 700 words a minute. 2, though, it paces similar to Quick Reader, but it also reads to you while it's pacing. And I found this to be mesmerizing when I was working out, because I'm so locked into the words and I'm hearing it, and time goes by faster than anything else, even watching a movie. So here, the video didn't come out that great, but it will show you what it looks like. Also, when you're wearing headphones, the sound is much more crisp, but nonetheless, it'll still give you an understanding of what it's like. We don't need to watch it twice, that's for sure. So that's Voice Dream, right? Now, when you have headphones in, it sounds a lot clearer, and obviously it looks clearer on the screen as well. But this, a 250-page book at about 650 words a minute, you can go through in about an hour and 40 minutes or so. So basically, any best-selling hardcover book generally going to take you about 2 hours. And it can be 2 hours when you were working out. And there's a lot of good reasons for that, but we'll get there. All right. So, oh, wow. Did we jump here already? Let's see. I guess we did. Oh. All right. There we go. All right. Now, after I found Voice Dream, I also started using Evernote. And so this is my Evernote. This is my Evernote box, or whatever you want to call it, my account. And as you can see right now, what we're looking at is a folder of book notes. And I just threw in some earlier this month, some old ones that had been sitting around. But I'm going to explain what you see here on the right. But I have thousands of books I've read that I've gone through this. And it makes my life a lot easier to come up with great ideas, to see connections, to have access to so much of the thoughts I've had, what I've come across, etc. Now I use this site, SomeNotes.net, and what SomeNotes does, I upload what I read in Goodreader and highlighted, and it exports directly with no extra notations, all my highlights. And then from there, it goes into Quick Reader, it goes into Evernote, it goes into the audio highlights, etc. But this is SomeNotes.net. So now this is what I do with books, right? So I load it into Voice Dream by getting it on LibGen or buying it on Amazon and then cracking it. And after I go through it in Voice Dream, I then decide, is this a book that I want to spend any more time on? If the answer is no, then I'll take notes on the book of what I read, what I remember, and why I decided not to read any further, right? But if I do decide this book is worth me spending more time with so that I can extract all the good stuff in it, then what I do is it goes then to Goodreader, right? I've already read it now in Voice Dream. Now it goes to Goodreader, and I will now read it again but I'll read it slower because I'm highlighting. Then after I'm done highlighting the book, it will then go to some notes. It'll strip out the highlights. Now those highlights will become the audio highlights. It'll become the PDF that's in my Dropbox. It will go and become an MP3 that I can listen to on my iPhone, and it gets pasted into Evernote. So that's the process. But then I took this course, and this course was a game changer for me, Build a Second Brain. It's by Tiago Fort. I believe James also took the course as well, although I'm not sure because he asked me about, like, where did I learn all this, some of this stuff, and I had sent him towards Tiago. Great course, great guy. If you want to take what I'm teaching you here, he doesn't teach about ramping up your input, but as far as organizational, Evernote, Second Brain, basically having an outside repository of every good idea you've come across, what I have, not the front half of the processing, but the categorizing and using. Good course though. So this is what happens today. So as you can see here, I basically have everything that I do or touch goes into Evernote. So it could be an audio memo that I record on my phone. On my watch. It could be an email that I want to read, like it's a good email that I get, not a personal one, but something I'm subscribed to that I get a lot of enjoyment out of, and I want to remember stuff. So like those emails automatically go to Evernote. The next icon right here is Goodreader. So that's easy. Word docs go into Evernote as well as Google Docs. Anytime like we have a copywriter write a new sales letter for me, I put it in Evernote. So this way I have all the sales letters and things like that. Anytime I'm surfing the web, there's an Evernote clipper. So I don't read any articles in my browser. If it looks interesting, I save it to Evernote. Then when I get to Evernote, if it's not interesting, I delete it. If I start reading it and then I decide it's not interesting, I delete it as well. But if I'm reading it and I'm interested, I will then start processing it, and that'll make more sense in a second. Handwritten notes, notes from my computer, Pocket, Dropbox, podcast notes. That's a service. I really like them. And then anything from my phone, my iPad, my computer. Basically, there is nothing in my universe that doesn't go through Evernote. So it's my central repository. It is my brain outside my brain, and it makes it so that I don't have to remember anything, but it's all there, and it gives me an environment where all my best ideas are and other people's best ideas are, for me to have the ability to connect dots and come up and bounce off stuff and come up with ideas. So, did I not? I guess I didn't do the animation on this. Oh well. All right. So this is back to the what you saw earlier in my Evernote, but now what you saw on the right-hand side is now on the left-hand side. So this was a book called Secret Sorceries of Mind Control Copy. It's from Dan Kennedy, and what I learned from Tiago. This is something I learned from Tiago, and he calls it progressive summarization, and this is a game changer. Because what it allows you to do is it allows you to process information, to figure out what the most salient points are, to leave a record of what those salient points are, so that in the future you'll always be able to quickly figure out whether this is useful for whatever you're working on in that moment. Now, I can also see how much time I've spent with a note based on how much work is done on the note, and the more time I've spent on that note, the more that note is worth. And it's not that I go and do all these steps that I'm about to show you with every note, but as I come across it, if I'm interested, I'm curious, or it's related to something I'm working on right now, then I will process more and I will go to the next step. So the first step here, right, you see first pass bolding up here, and as you can see, like I bolded, it is necessary to sell to the maximum and to use the most powerful techniques that are in copy to sell info products for you to feel okay in your situation, with the end justifying your means, right? I didn't read that. Whoops. I didn't read that with inflection, but you get it, right? So I read this whole thing, which was quite lengthy, and I bolded anything that I thought was important, right? That's first pass. The next time I look at this note, now I'm just going to look at the parts that are bold, and I'm going to then highlight what's even more important than just the bold, right? So, this whole thing was important, right? That's why I bolded it, but use the most powerful techniques there are in copy to sell info products is the part that I highlighted there, right? And we actually are, to a great extent, selling nothing. So that's the second pass through. So now I've bolded it, and then in certain parts I've highlighted some of those bolds. And then the next stage is consolidating. And what consolidating means for me is that I take everything that I highlighted and I copy and paste it at the very top, and it turns into a bullet point list of every interesting thing that I bolded and highlighted. Now, the next time I go through that material, the fourth time, I actually now start to have a dialogue with the author. I do, I look at every point that I highlighted and I go, yes, but, or yes, and, to kind of come up with what I believe, or a question, or if I disagree, or what that reminds me of or makes me think of. And so I'm having a dialogue with the material, but it's now much more condensed. And then the fifth pass, if I go to a fifth pass, like I said, less and less go to every next stage. I then take a topic, like let's say getting into the flow state, where I've read like 7 or 8 books on, and now start bringing it all together so it becomes like my master notes on a topic that I think is far superior to any specific individual book. So this progressive summarization allows me to dip in and out of notes, know where I left off, isolate the best ideas, and there's more, right? So I hope some of you have read the book Thinking Fast and Slow, and if you have, then you know how good of a book it is. For those who haven't, Daniel Kahneman, who won a Nobel Prize he's the only economist or psychologist, psychologist who's won a Nobel Prize, I think, for economics, if I'm remembering correctly. Anyway, we have 2 systems of thinking in our brain. We have fast thinking and slow thinking, and most of our time we spend in system 1, which is fast thinking, because it doesn't require very much effort. Slow thinking, system 2, requires lots of effort. So I want you to kind of appreciate the fact that we're designing your notes for yourself for System 1, quick thinking, by spending time now and successive times in System 2 by reviewing, right, and highlighting and bolding and things like that. So what I just shared with you is insanely powerful, and I hope that you see it. But there are certain things that you'll have to get past. The most common passive reading habits that will interfere and act as speed bumps to you reading faster are 1, your mind wandering, 2, regression, and 3, subvocalization. Those are the things that will slow you down. Subvocalization is saying the words in your head. Remember where I said see, hear, understand, and we want to take you to see, understand? We want you to stop saying the words in your head. And the way you can do that is chew gum, put a pen or pencil in your mouth like this, listen to music, but any of those or all of those, well, you can't chew gum and have a pencil in your mouth, should cut down on subvocalization, and as you go faster and faster, you won't be able to anyway. Regression shouldn't apply here because you're going to be using the pacer. So if you're using the pacer, you're following that so your eyes aren't going to skip backwards. And mind wandering, this is really where it starts getting interesting. Your mind won't wander. I bought back in like 1990, I think, a variable speed, variable pitch tape player from Radio Shack so that I could listen to cassettes in high speed. And I did it, and it worked so well for me because I have ADD, and normally when I'm listening to anything or watching anything, my brain is going so much faster than what I'm watching that I get bored and then I start doing stuff and then I miss stuff, right? What I found was that when I speed things up to the point where I have to stay totally focused or I'm going to lose it right away, I then tend to stay totally focused. So my mind does not wander at all when I'm going fast enough. So here, remember this. See, hear, understand to see, understand, which is a disruption, and it will be difficult and challenging, but all you have to do to get past that is be okay without comprehending. And that's why reviewing notes on something like Quick Reader, where you don't have to worry about getting it, where it's just review, and you've already read it before, allows you to really start raking up the speed. And that speed transfers. Like, I read fast whether I'm reading a book offline or whether I'm reading on Quick Reader. It took some time, but Quick Reader got me from like 400 or 500 to well over 2,000 words a minute. And I don't read 2,000 words a minute when I'm reading a book offline, but I read maybe at about 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 while I'm highlighting. So I'm going at a pretty nice clip. And but this is one of the big points. So you have to be willing to practice without comprehension. That's the thing. If you're willing to train your brain by spending time doing this without comprehending it, you will get to the other side. And it won't, it's not going to be like overnight, but it will happen pretty fast and you'll notice it happening. So this doesn't take a long time. It's very, very fast with watching or listening. It takes a little bit more time with reading, but not that much time. So what makes this speed reading process work so well? Okay, well, if you're going to do it the way I do it, right, which is I'm either doing Quick Reader or Voice Stream while I'm working out on some kind of aerobic machine, then if you work out every day, you're getting daily disciplined practice. The material's already familiar, so you don't have that pressure to comprehend. It forces you to pay complete attention because you're going fast enough that it warrants your complete attention, and there's benefits to that. You're locking in what you've read from spaced repetition. We're going to get to that. You're consistently pushing yourself to go faster by doing 2x, 4x, 6x. The long-term review of all that you marked important over and over again, and can do deeper topic dives at high speed before important days. Like, so on certain days when I was going to be meeting with a client, I could read the 15 books that were related to the issues that client has while I was on the elliptical that morning by reviewing all the book notes that I had on those books at a high speed, and it would be there because I'd already reviewed them tons and tons of times. So this is a famous forgetting curve and Hermann Ebbinghaus, and it shows that about 75% of what you read, what you listen to, etc., is forgotten within 24 hours. That's a bummer. But with spaced repetition, it eases the forgetting curve. So I want to show you what we're doing when we're following the system that I just laid out for you. The first time, the initial study, I go through it, right, 2 hours in Voice Stream. So I've now reviewed it once. Now I'm reviewing it a second time, reading it again and highlighting it in Goodreader, right? Now I'm reviewing it a third time when I put it into Evernote, and that doesn't even count, the progressive summarization I'm putting here. I'm reviewing it a third time when I read it in Quick Reader, when I listen to the audio highlights, and when I progressively summarize. So the odds are that within a few days, you don't retain 80% of what you study, read, learn, etc. And then you go on to the next thing. And I go on to the next thing, but because of the things I have in place, I'm locking all this in. And my Evernote becomes this extremely valuable storehouse of knowledge capital, intellectual capital. All my projects are running through there. So every good idea, the knowledge is accumulating, my experience is accumulating. You know, all of my notes for this presentation will be in Evernote, and the next time I have to present on anything related to this, which generally I don't, it'll be better, right? Because now I have all this material that I'll be pulling from. And so this, especially for someone like me in the info business, but it doesn't matter whether you're in the info business or not. Having this storehouse of all your knowledge and knowledge capital is priceless, and it makes you get better and better and better as you connect dots from different things. Okay, attention and intention. Okay, so there's tons of science that shows, and research that shows, the more attention you pay when you're learning something, the more you will retain. So by going faster and forcing yourself to pay complete, full attention, you are actually learning better. You're building better synapses, more myelin sheath around those synapses, and so you're locking in memories better. In addition to that, intention also increases learning. So I think it was called I think it was from the book The Talent Code. And it's about how, you know, a kid could practice 3 hours piano 3 hours a day versus another kid who's only practicing it an hour a day. But the one who's practicing it an hour a day could actually improve more than the one who's doing it 3 hours a day by just doing one thing different. If the one who's practicing an hour a day believes that they're going to be playing piano as an adult, and this is really important to them, then that hour will stimulate myelin sheath, like, you know, going around the synapses, dendrites, whatever. And the 3 hour a day person, if they don't think they're going to be using it in the future, will not get it. You know, intention, because your body is building this thing, plays a valuable, important role. And so attention and intention are both leveraged in this process and in this system. And as I said, the faster I input, the more I pay attention. And the more I pay attention, the more I learn. So this is a vicious spiral upwards. But the question is that you have to ask is, what do you want to optimize your brain for? And this doesn't sound hopefully this doesn't sound as crazy as what it might sound. But what do you want to optimize your brain for? And what I mean by that is, who do you want to be in the future? Right? Do you know who you want to be? Do you have a definition of what success is? And do you know what type of person, with what capabilities and what knowledge, who do you want to be? And recognize that that person that you're building is your future self. You know, they've done a lot of research that shows that actually when we think of our future selves, the same part of the brain that when we think about strangers lights up. We have to become a lot closer friends with our future self. We should feel accountable to our future self. And your goal is to make life easy for your future self. So how are you going to do that? Well, the first thing is to figure out, what do you want to optimize your brain for? What do you want your brain to be best at, right? You know, yesterday you heard from a bunch of media buyers like Jordan Menard and Nick and James, and, you know, they're going to want to optimize their brain for something different than what I optimize my brain for. Jordan's probably going to want to spot the next tactic, the next ad buying strategy, or whatever, right? Whereas I make the most money from ideas, just ideas. So, like, for me, I want to optimize my database, my learning, my everything to generate home run ideas. So one thing that is not a bad idea to do is, if you know where you want to end up, is to create what's called the skill tree. And the first time I ever heard about it, a skill tree, was from Danny Forrest. You'll see his name right here. He writes for Medium, and this picture is from Medium. So if you want to learn more about skill trees, you could just check out Danny. But here's an example of one for him where he wanted to get more charismatic. And so apparently, the yellow ones maybe he already got done, the white ones he still had to do, whatever. But this is a way of kind of clarifying what are all the micro skills that make up the bigger skill. And by doing that, you now have a much more focused, intentional plan to get to a place or a becoming than you did before. I want to give you an example of the same concept, even though I didn't mark it up in a skill tree. Oh, wait. First, I want to show you another skill tree. So this is another skill tree, right? This is a person, I just found it, in Google, and she seems to do design. I see that she's an entrepreneur. She's done some copywriting. So as you can see here, if you can see, there are 3 dots. And I think those 3 dots for her mean that she has competency. And when there's 2 dots, she has a little less competency. And when there's no dots, she hasn't learned that at all. So I blew up the bottom left tools. And you can see, Google Forms, Google Sheets, she seems to be a pro at. Power Business Intelligence, not so much. And she doesn't know how to use any of the 3D design stuff, or Notion, or Miro, or Emberly, right? So she's keeping track of all the tasks. Excuse me. All the knowledge she would need to be complete, and therefore is very clear about where she should be spending her time next. So, part of my ability to learn and synthesize, one of the cool things that happened for me was when I first got online, back in 2001 or 2, I really looked up to Dan Kennedy and Jay Abraham and John Carlton and Gary Halpert. But I was able to learn so fast that all of those guys became friends of mine, peers and partners, in a very short period of time. And I've been fortunate to be friends with many of the top copywriters in the world, if not in the country. And I'm not a great copywriter. But I've gone through courses on copy. I've read God knows how much copy. But when I think about what it is that is the obstacle for me for writing more copy, and I did this a couple years ago, what I identified was that I really didn't have the rhythm. Good copy has a rhythm. And also, I didn't have the vocabulary. While the vocabulary I understand is rather large because I do so much reading, the vocabulary I use, my working vocabulary, is quite small. So everything is great or, good. And I don't have so many different adjectives and power verbs and stuff like that. So what did I do? Well, if I only have these 2 problems, rhythm and vocab, well, what the old pros used to suggest is that you write out letters by hand to get that rhythm and to see that vocab. But that's just about, the same thing as spaced repetition. We can get to the same effect by spaced repetition. So I did not write them out by hand. I tried it once, and I was like, this is ridiculous. So instead, I made audio versions of sales letters to just listen to over and over again. And what I found is that if I listened to it enough times, I can start to actually incorporate that copywriter's kind of tone and voice. And here's an example of a Dan Kennedy one that's sped up to 200%. This one is Dan Kennedy's Wealth Attraction Home Study. We're not going to play the whole thing. We'll play 30 or 40 seconds.
Warning, this could be the most important information you will ever read about wealth attraction and creating gigantic financial breakthroughs nearly overnight. Discover the little known and never talked about success philosophies, beliefs, thinking, and personal behaviors that allow millionaire and multimillionaire entrepreneurs to attract maximum money and create maximum wealth in record time. If you could change just a few things you think, change a few things about the way you do business, just a few, and suddenly experience a lifting of stress, struggle, anxiety, frustration, and uncertainty, accompanied by a much multiplied influx of cash, a multiplied influence with others, and accelerated accomplishment of your goals, would you want to at least experiment with those changes? Dear friend, this letter is your invitation to get the at-home version of my one-time only wealth seminar that I recently conducted on audio or on audio and video tape. And there are reasons you should do that, and do it now. And then invest a serious amount of time with these materials that transcend the work I'm typically known for.
So by listening to that over and over and listening to other Dan Kennedy ones, I could start to write like Dan Kennedy, or like Jay Abraham, or John Carlton, or Gary Bencivenga. So this would be another example of figuring out, like, what is it that you want to be? What's missing? How do you plug those holes?
Warning.
Oh, let's go to the next one. The next thing, though, let's say you're not clear on what you really should be learning. You're just not clear. Well, there's something called the T-shaped marketer, entrepreneur, media buyer, etc. They're now even coming up with an I-shaped. You could look at that as well. It's just a takeoff of it. But anyway, the T shape here, what it represents is the horizontal line is like a generalist, right? So you're a specialist by the vertical line. You go very deep in knowledge in one topic, but you're a specialist that is also a generalist, or you're a generalist with a specialty. And that allows you to be much more functional in many other capacities than you normally would if you just had a deep knowledge and that was it. Now, this started for startups. Startups were looking for T-shaped marketers because these T-shaped marketers could do a lot more than just an individual specialist. And so here are some T-shaped explanations, right? So this is from Buffer, and this is a guy by the name of Ash, and he's a content marketer, right? So his deep skill set is in content marketing, SEO, and multimedia, which makes sense for a content marketer. But his base knowledge is behavioral psychology, storytelling, data and analytics, research, design and UX, brand and positioning, HTML and CSS, right? So this is a person that can get something up online by themselves, quickly done, right? But they also have that deep knowledge in content marketing and SEO, social media, multimedia, etc., right? So this is a T-shaped marketer from Buffer. Here's a bunch of other T-shaped marketers, growth hackers, product managers, etc. And so you can see that there's a wide skill set here. And it's not a bad idea to find a T-shaped version of what you do. It's also not a bad idea to look at the T-shaped versions of other positions in marketing so that you can think about, well, maybe I should learn some front-end code or conversion rate optimization or funnel marketing or copywriting or behavioral psychology or marketing automation or customer retention or any of these things. But learn it as not just like a dabble, like where you really learn it to a level, it goes into your Evernote, it becomes part of your knowledge capital. It is now something that you feel well-versed to talk about, and even more versed to actually do. So, this is just for fun, really, but just if you're thinking about your future self, right, and you lose something, and you can't find it, and after searching for it for a while, you finally found it. Where would you put it back to most take care of your future self? The first place you looked. The first place you looked. Make sense? This had nothing to do with this presentation, just more about understanding that you're trying to make things easier for your future self. Think. I don't think most people spend enough time thinking. It's my experience that most people spend almost no time thinking. These are a few of my journals. I've been keeping a journal since April 29, 1996. So that is what? 24 plus years. I switched from the ones on the left to the ones on the right. Obviously, they don't all fit in the picture. But my journal is the only place where I really do deep reflective thought. If I'm sitting down somewhere thinking, I can do that for like 5 or 10 minutes. If I'm having a conversation with someone, I can do that all day. But just thinking by myself, my best ideas, trying to connect dots, things like that, the only place I do that is in my journal. And I keep them all. And so this is my space where I spend a half an hour to an hour every day thinking. How much time do you spend thinking? And do you spend any time thinking? And I'm talking about hardcore, heavy-duty, heavy-lifting thinking. Keeping a journal has been one of the best things that I have ever done. One, because it gives me a place to think. Two, because I believe that the person who I can learn the most from is myself. Not because I know more than anyone else, but because, like, I'm living my life. And the patterns I notice through the journal, my experiences, the longer patterns, the 10-year patterns that I've now seen repeated, two coming, like, eventually a third time, I wouldn't even know that they were patterns if, like, had I not been keeping a journal, right? So you get to know yourself so much better, but you also get a place to think. Think about your life, think about where things are working, where they're not, what you can do about it. And one of the thinking tools I like to use are questions. And so I want to offer you this for free, no opt-in, no nothing. All you have to do is join our Facebook group. It's called Strategic Profits. And I want to give you this report on the left, and it's called The Hidden Obstacles to Your Success. And it's Neglected Knowledge, False Beliefs, and Flawed Thinking. I wrote this 100-page report for my clients because I didn't think anyone was thinking enough. And so this is my call to task on that. And the group is called Strategic Profits, the name of my business. And I used to sell this report for $97, but it's free in our Facebook group, and you can join for free. Don't even need to give us an email for that. So it's Strategic Profits, and the report is called The Hidden Obstacles to Your Success. And in it, I have, I think, at least 100 of the questions that I use in my journal to guide my thinking, right? Because, I can go into my journal with a bunch of questions, answer those questions, and then that will stimulate a lot of thinking on my part. You'll have those questions. I also want to advise you that you should become a choice architect. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. Here is a quote from H.G. Wells: "The path of least resistance is the path of the loser." And I have a correction to make to that, which says, unless you make it the winning path. And that leads me to friction. Friction is the magic, it's the magic force in accomplishment. And what I mean by that is that you want to make the right thing to do easier and easier and easier, and you want to make the things that are not the right thing to do more difficult. So what do I mean by that? We're either going to increase friction or we're going to reduce friction. We want to try and reduce friction everywhere that we can, except in making the wrong choices. So let's say that every time you come home from work, you turn on the television, and it's a bad habit because then you sit in front of the television for 2 hours. So if we're going to interject some friction, what we're going to do is we take the batteries out of the remote control and we put them in the kitchen. Doesn't mean you can't watch television. It just means that whenever you want to watch television, you got to take the extra 30 seconds to walk to the kitchen, grab the batteries, bring it back. We're adding some barriers, right? We're adding extra work to do, hence extra friction to get the TV on. And because of that, we don't make the best choices. We take the easiest choices. That's what most of us do. We make the easy choice. And so we want to make the easy choice the best choice. And we want to reduce friction anywhere else in our lives. If there's anything that bothers you, if there's a door handle that doesn't work in your house or your apartment, and it bothers you every day, you pay a price for that. If there's something in your car that bothers you, you pay a price for that. So you want to reduce those and eliminate those and make what it is that you don't want to be doing more difficult to be doing it. So one of the things that eliminates friction is choices, right? We have way too many choices to make these days. So I've been wearing the same outfit for 25 years. As you can see, same haircut, more or less, and same outfit, jeans and a black V-neck. Here's, you can see 1995, 2012, 2014, 2016, 2017, 2011, 2012, 2009, 2018, 2019. This is my team. In 2011, they all dressed up on Halloween like me because that's what I wear. And that just makes my life easier, right? It makes my life easier basically on what I'm wearing, but it also makes my life easier for shopping. It makes my life easier for continuity of videos. It makes my life easier in lots of ways, and it reduces the amount of thinking I have to do. In addition to that, this is not the same thing, but it does reduce friction, so I guess there is a parallel here. For me, with VoiceStream and Quick Reader and the elliptical, if there's a book I really want to read, I'm running down to the elliptical machine. And I'm not going to not read if I'm working out. So I'm killing two birds with one stone, but I also really enjoy both of those things. So they're both pushing me, right? So I'm getting extra leverage. I'm spending 1 hour, but I'm getting an hour's worth of speed reading done and an hour's worth of exercise, and I'm paying full attention. So I'm getting lots of benefits. Now, one thing that I do want to share with you about learning, because I think a lot of people make the mistake about learning, is that learning is holistic. And what I mean by that is that learning is not just the storage of information, like memorizing a fact. And it really, like, that's the wrong way to think about it. Learning is about making connections. An idea is not a neuron. It's a bunch of neurons and dendrites, synapses, firing at once, right? And we learn by connecting what's new with what we already know. That's one of the reasons why metaphors and similes are so powerful, because they're already coming in with that hook, right? But you learn by connecting what you're coming across with what you already know. This is like that. This is related to that. This is similar to that, right? It's in the association and the connections where learning happens. Random facts will do nothing for you and your business. But connections will do everything for you as it comes to better ideas, new insights, etc. So for me, I organize my notes, right, for insight, for distinctions, for power laws, and big ideas. And that's what I organize my notes for, right, across all platforms, whether I'm on my iPad, my phone, my laptop, no, it doesn't matter, right? I have access to Evernote in all of those. I have access to all my book notes and everything. I have access to the audios, and they are linked together. My Evernote notes based on relationships, so that like I'm constantly coming across great ideas I forgot about, that I thought about at one point, that now I see a connection for, and it helps me develop a better mental map of what's going on in the world. This is what's known as PKM. What I've been teaching you is PKM, and this is the more generic PKM. PKM being personal knowledge management. And the standard model is seek, sense, and share. So you find stuff, right, here. You also do searching, right? And then you go through that material, right, using your senses and thinking. And then you create something new, you synthesize it, and then you share it across all these platforms. Maybe, right? But seek, sense, share. This also gets your work. This gets you known. This allows for a flow where you're learning stuff, you're sharing it, and when you share what you learn better. So something, if this is interesting to you, you can now know where to follow up. In addition to that, I forgot to mention this, and I forgot to make a slide about it, but I do 2 live streams a week on Facebook Lives, free. One on Tuesdays from 2 to 4, and one on Thursdays from 6 to 8. That's New York time. And if you have any questions about any of the stuff I've covered, feel free to swing by during the live stream and ask me a question. I'd be glad to answer it for you. The other side also with this seek, sense, share is to really get a sense of what's your input to output ratio. A lot of people are somewhat skewed, and generally they're more skewed on the input side than they are on the output side. So whether you're looking at input versus output, or seek, sense, share, or input, reflect, implement, and share, however you break up the process, what you want to make sure is that you've got, like, for every hour of input, you've got 2 hours of output. and processing. And it really should be even more than that, but a minimum of 2 hours. 2 to output for 1 input. Overall, not in any given project, but overall. And when I say output, I'm also talking about doing the work. So it's not inputting, like for me, is just getting it into Evernote. Then there's processing, and then there's outputting. And processing and outputting should be a lot more than just inputting. All right. So I also want to share some nootropics I take. I'm not a doctor. I'm not suggesting anyone take these. I'm just telling you what I take. It's made a big difference for me. That's why I share it. Okay? All right, so nicotine is a proven cognitive enhancer. It improves attention, improves short and long-term memory, it improves performance, and it fights depression. I started chewing gum because I chewed tobacco in college, and that's how I used to stay up and focus when I was pulling all-nighters. And now I still chew it, and my doctor said it's okay. So maybe not at the amount I chew, but my doctor even sometimes wears a patch just because of the cognitive enhancement. It's one of the most proven, though. There's a lot of articles if you want to look it up on nicotine and what it does to the brain. Okay, that's Adderall on the left. That's Provigil on the right. Depends on what you think about them. I have ADD, so I've been prescribed these on and off, and they're beneficial. They're PEDs for thinkers. That's what they are. And you want to make sure that you don't grow a tolerance to it, because then they're worthless. But they certainly can help you focus and go harder for longer. Where I get most of my nootropics are from Nootropics Depot. They have really good prices and really good supplements. This is the guy that I listen to. His name is Ryan. And what's Ryan's last name? I forget Ryan's last name. Oh, well. But his name of his company is Cortex Labs. And he's got great videos on YouTube that he puts out almost every day, as far as like different nootropic stacks that you can take and different, all different kind of supplement routine stacks and etc. So these are my two favorite over-the-counter stuff: phenylpiracetam and subglutamine. And actually, there's a good reason why I like subglutamine. I did some research later on that shows that subglutamine is actually good for an ADD brain. I was going to do a write-up, but I'll probably do that on one of my live streams, like all the supplements I take for ADD and what it helps. But subglutamine helps with my verbal fluency. And so these two combined are really great for me for when I write. So if you're interested in the stuff that I've been sharing about progressive summarization, about going from buckets to streams, from learning how to really organize your material for the outcomes that you're after, and so much more really, then you want to check out Tiago at Build a Second Brain. I have no relationship there. I'm just a customer and a friend and a fan, but I think he's teaching stuff that will eventually be embraced by a lot more people. And if you want that report, or if you just want to come and visit me during some of my live streams, as I said, I'm probably the only guy out there that has a $1 billion plus testimonial from one company. I've been responsible for over $15 billion worth of increased sales since being online in 2002. I was the first online business coach that ever existed. My first free report, the Internet Business Manifesto, has been downloaded millions upon millions of times and has generated, I think, about $30 or $40 million. And I've written a bunch of other reports too, like the Attention Age Doctrine 1 and 2 in 2007, where I predicted I predicted that attention would become the scarcest commodity online, and that then also that people's attention would be going to social media. If you don't know, I invented the automated webinar and a bunch of other things. I didn't want to share like a bunch of stuff about me up front and kind of come off like an egotistical asshole. So I'm kind of the real deal, and if you check me out, you'll see that. I'm sure if you trust James and Nick, then you know that they wouldn't put anyone who wasn't someone teaching you. I really hope that I was able to get across to you what I tried. And there's that video where I took some clips from, that's on YouTube. It's Rich Scheffrin's reading process. I've been doing some of my recent live streams on my learning process. And I hope that you join our group, but even more so, I hope that you take what I'm sharing with you to heart. I've coached so many people in this industry. I've seen a lot of people come and go. And the smart ones always stick around. And what I've just shared with you is a recipe for being very smart, very fast. And anyone can do it. I've taught people to do this who you would look at and say, if that person can do it, I can certainly do it. So that's my presentation for you. I am strongly advising you to amp up your input, right? Your processing power, to have that turn into knowledge capital for you, and going forward, so you have this repository, and to do the spaced repetition, and to have this Evernote system while you're feeding it with information, and while you're processing it and setting it up for System 2 later on, using System 2 to set up for System 1 later on, that you really start to step up your game, because the rate of change is only accelerating. The amount of information being generated is only accelerating. The world's a crazy place, and having the ability to pick up skills really fast, learn things really fast, never feel like you don't have time to learn something or to understand something is priceless. And that's what I want to give you, and I hope I did. And so if you want to know more about me, just find us on Facebook or our website, strategicprofits.com, or you can look up my name, Rich Schefren. And it's been my pleasure sharing this with you. To higher profits and beyond, Rich Schefren, over and out.